to thank Lagunitas Jameson as well as MailChimp for sponsoring CIMMfest, which is sort of the mother of CIMMCon. I want to tell you just a little bit of how this all began. I went to film school for just a short time, and I was thinking about things that I'd like to do. I thought maybe one thing I could do to get my name out there was a web series on women who do things that are atypical for women, are not considered women's jobs or whatever. And when I would ask people around Chicago, Sue Miller and Julia Adams would come up all the time.
Hi everyone, thank you. I'm Monica Kendrick. I'm a music writer for the Chicago Reader and very much a Lounge Acts regular back in the day. But there were some things that happened before my time because I only moved to Chicago in '92. So, let me introduce the panelists. We have Lawrence Peters, who was a talent booker at Lounge Acts, and he's also a musician of note. Plays in Plastic Crime Wave, Velcro Lewis Group. Julia Adams, one of the co-founders, co-owners of Lounge Acts. Sue Miller, another one of the co-owners of Lounge Acts. Mark Greenberg, who was also a talent booker at Lounge Acts. He's a music producer now, has played in a number of bands, most notably the Cocktails, who were a fantastic band who actually reunited for the last night at Lounge Acts. They were the last band to play as the doors closed. Seth Kim-Cohen, who is a assistant professor at the Art Institute, director of experimental programming at WLPN 105.5, has a show called the Lounge Acts Radio Hour. You might also remember him from Number One Cup and The Fire Show. I think for the benefit of everyone who is too young to have gone to Lounge Acts in the heyday, or everyone who somehow missed out on it, or someone who moved here during the run. Can't remember, which is a lot of us. Let's start at the very beginning, and I want to pass the mic over to Julia for this one, and Sue, if she wants to speak up also. You were involved in booking bands in a number of other clubs.
Oh, me?
Yes, both of you.
Yes, I was.
Weren't you? Yes, you were. So how did it go from there to actually running a club of your own? If you want to tell a little bit of that story.
Let's see. I booked both the Cubby Bear and the Sports Corner for the George Lucas family, and it was very unpleasant trying to mix music and baseball bands. And then I booked the West End at Armitage Racine when the neighborhood was still really crappy. And then what happened then? Oh, then I went back to the Cubby Bear, and then I just wanted to get out of there and go on my own, and found Julia and our former brief partner Jennifer, and approached them and bought in. They've been there for 2 years already. And then when I bought in, we gutted it and changed it up.
I met Jennifer through a mutual friend. I had been working in bars and restaurants in Chicago since I got out of college, basically, and wanted to own my own bar. I used to work at Mac's Tavern, which was a fantastic place. I adored it and learned a lot there. And I met Jennifer through a mutual friend. She wanted to open a club. She'd been booking some bar on the south side of, I don't even know what it was, on Michigan Avenue, a blues bar of some sort. And so we met, and she found the space on Lincoln Avenue. It was called Nightcaps, and we bought the business. We didn't buy the building, we just bought the business in 1987, and did a little bit of work before we opened, and she was the booker at the time, and I was the bar manager, a bookkeeper, everything else person, and she mostly booked blues, which everyone knows is not my favorite type of music. Sorry, Chicago. And I used to go to the Cubby Bear because I absolutely loved the kind of music that Sue booked there. She booked the indie rock music, which was what I really liked. So I knew of Sue before she really officially knew me. And when she approached us I'm not sure how it happened exactly.
Well, I knew Jennifer from college.
Oh, that's
I didn't
right.
know my beloved Julia at all at that time.
No, and Jennifer sort of maybe gave the impression that I wanted to leave. I don't,
Emily, she was the one who left.
yeah, so we kind of, we formed an instant bond, like the minute we met almost. And, you know, it was just a very natural thing for us to work together, and Jennifer just, for whatever reason, she just didn't.
She wanted to move on to other things. She became a lawyer or something.
Yeah, right. So she moved on in 1990.
She stayed 1 year after I came, and I came in '89.
Right. So that's how that happened.
That was boring.
Sorry.
And what was it? And what was the neighborhood like at that time, Lincoln and Fullerton?
You know, there used to be a lot of there was Orphans, there was other
Wax tracks.
records across the street, which where my now husband worked.
The bookstore.
Guild Books.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, there was DePaul students, but it wasn't overly sports bar-y. Like, it was actually kind of a cool neighborhood. Children's bookstore across the street. Orphans, yeah. Didn't I say that? Yeah, Orphans.
Ratsos.
Right, yeah, it was actually, when in 1987,
Seven.
it was a cool place.
And Lounge Acts was, even among other clubs at that time, Lounge Acts was especially famous for its relationships with musicians. And maybe you two and some of the people, the guys involved in booking, you talk about how some of those relationships came about and what made Lounge Acts stand out from other clubs, even at the time.
Well, I moved to Chicago after Lounge Acts was started, and I can talk to that just because I was one of those bands that kind of showed up and saw Lounge Acts totally different than any other clubs we played. Most kind of clubs, you're kind of programmed into the calendar, and there's also this kind of us against them with the person that books you. In fact, one club in Kansas City would book you for $100 and only pay you $75 because they took a booking fee for booking you. So the other side of the coin was Sue and Julia, who were, like friends and, sisters and moms right away. And you could see that when we came to Chicago, we went to Wax Tracks, because that's where you go when you come to Chicago, and we dropped off some records at Lounge Acts, hoping to play there, and just, staring at these calendars of every single night we wanted to be there and see these bands. So, a lot of clubs have a lot of great bands, but it was really Sue and Julia, that you could see it every night. We were there till 5 a.m., on a lot of nights because bands, they wanted to hang out with Sue and Julia. I mean, that's really what it was. And they were nice enough to hang out too. There's like a lot of clubs where you never even meet the person that books you or the owner of the club. I mean, it's really stark difference. The end.
Oh. Yeah, basically it's the same thing that Mark said. I didn't actually have any bands when I moved here in '92, but I lived in Ravenswood, and I would win tickets on CRD, and so I'd go almost every night because I'd be the only one listening at 3 a.m. So I won tickets, and I saw all these amazing local shows and touring stuff, and I thought, man, this club is great. I moved here from Lawrence, Kansas, which had a great music scene when I left, but nothing like Chicago's music scene. And when I finally started working at Lounge Acts, one of the things that I was surprised by and impressed by was that the attitude about bands and about music was musicians are doing something really important and valuable. So there would be nights that the door wasn't that great. So Sue and Julie would actually they would authorize me as a door guy to pay the bands a little extra out of our money, just to make sure that they could get to their next gig if they were an out-of-town band. And that was really impressive to me. I think that's a fantastic attitude to have. Lots of integrity in that. So basically that, right?
All right. I also want to talk a little bit about gender in indie rock in the 80s and 90s. Just not too much, but the idea of two women running a club like this, it was not common. It was not the norm. And did you feel that you were up against something? Or did
You know, we get that question all the time, and to me, it was just being a person that owned a rock club with my friend Sue, who happened to be a woman also. Honestly, I didn't ever think about it until someone brought it up, ever. It was like, why am I any different from Joe Shanahan? Or I'm not. I'm just a person who loves music, who owns this club, and I'm going to be nice and do the best I can do. Period.
It seemed like a very hopeful time in that respect, because you did have so many things, cases of like, you know, women who played in bands, mixed gender bands, and it was no thing. You know, it did feel like we were on the way to that. I wonder sometimes if we've rolled back a little bit. But I also want to talk about how you saw lounge acts fitting into the general Chicago scene. And this question goes for everyone, anyone who wants to answer it, because lounge acts did not exist in a vacuum, and Chicago had many, many other venues. It had a very lively scene that could support that many. But I'm just wondering talk about how you saw yourself fitting into that larger picture.
I mean, I think that we filled a niche, like, you know, the kind of bands that we did. They wanted to play at Lounge Acts because they knew they were going to be treated well and we'd have fun. And when we first started, when Sue first started in '89 with us, there weren't a ton of other indie rock clubs at the time. But I feel like because bands wanted to play there, it made it easier almost to get really great shows. And it became a little harder as the '90s went on when more clubs opened. But it seemed there was, you know, most people were pretty fair. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, when I came to Lounge X, well, from Cubby Bear and West End, there were not a lot of clubs, like Julia said, doing that kind of or that level of band. And so when I went to Lounge X, a lot of them did come with me, and more clubs opened up similar to us while we were open, but we did have a lot of loyalty from the bands even as they got a little bigger, because we loved them and they loved us. And you know, it was friendly competition for the most part with everybody. Like, still is, and maybe one or two minor exceptions.
I don't suppose you want to tell us some stories. Later. Okay. I think we're going to have to head into some of the bad times here and talk about really started to maybe be the beginning of the end, you know, the neighborhood gentrification, the whole thing with that whole situation with the liquor license, noise complaints, that sort of thing. Personally, I feel like, you know, you move next door to an airport, that's your damn problem. But you should know. But, you know, as a neighborhood change, people were not so amenable to that point of view. And I'd like to hear from all of you on this, what your experience at that time.
It was really one guy, not really the neighborhood. It was one guy caused all of our problems. And he was, I don't know what his problem was, but I mean, he filed complaints against us on nights we weren't even open. So he just had it out for us. But as far as, I mean, I don't think anyone else disliked us. The neighbors liked us, the police liked us. When they were forced to ticket us every night, they were not happy about it. But they had to when this guy kept filing complaints.
And there was a touch and go benefit CD, number of benefit this is in '96, right? A whole bunch of concerts to help you pay your legal fees and help, you know, keep the club open. And did that make a big difference?
Oh, absolutely, because we were in court. I mean, we had to have an attorney. And so, you know, how do you pay for that? Well, thankfully, Touch and Go put out the CD, the Lounge X Defense and Relocation CD, which, you know, the money that we used to pay our attorney was directly from that. I'm not really sure how we would have done it without that. Maybe we would have had to close immediately. I don't know. So in that regard, you know, we can't thank Touch and Go enough, because they kept us open till 2000, basically.
And as we all know, I mean, because we're here, Lounge Acts has not been forgotten. It's definitely not been one of those fly-by-night, come-and-go sort of bars. Quite the opposite. If anything, I think its legend has grown in the, it's hard to believe, 15 years since it's closed. And Seth, I wanted to target this one to you specifically because you have your radio show and you're very, involved kind of as a historian of this. What do you see about the influence of lounge acts and the legacy of that kind of social scene, that kind of environment?
Yeah, well, I should start by saying that we don't quite have the radio show yet. So if anybody's interested in participating in the radio show, we're starting a new FM FCC licensed radio station in Bridgeport, WLPN. And we have in mind to do this show called the Lounge Acts Radio Hour. And what the format will be exactly is up to the people who participate, so it's not set in stone. But it seems to me that there's something beyond just the music that was played at Lounge Acts that could be part of the radio show. Something about the ethos. We've touched on this a little bit already in terms of the way that Sue and Julia treated their clientele, their employees. I mean, try to find people who haven't worked for their employees for 15 years who are still willing to come back up on stage and talk about the good old days. It's not common. And then the bands, of course, too. That, as someone who was in a band and toured and did all that stuff and went to club after club after club, most nights you walk in and you feel like it's purely a business transaction. You get up on stage and do your job, and at the end of the night they'll give you less money than they promised you, and you'll put your tail between your legs and move on. But at Lounge Acts it never felt that way. It felt like, it felt like a family gathering in a way. Not to get too nostalgic about it, but it felt much more about the music and about the sense of community. So I'm hoping the radio show can convey some of that by having people talk about their experiences at the club, by relating how Lounge Acts might have influenced their life choices from there on out, push them towards music or push them towards other endeavors, and weave all that stuff into the music that gets played on the show. So I'm hoping the show is about more than just the music, but obviously centered around the music. So if anybody's interested in participating in the show, on the air or behind the scenes, just talk to me afterwards.
And those of you, everyone still has gone on to other projects. I want to hear from each one of you how you bring something from Lounge Acts into what you're doing now, whether it's a sense of ethics or fun or whatever it is.
Evelyn Weston, who got me my job at Lounge Acts, she had gotten a cocktail position at the Hideout, and she got me a door job at the Hideout, and eventually, shortly after that, I got moved upstairs to be booking assistant to Katie Tutton. The attitude, at the Hideout and also I think throughout the city was that at the time, everybody was hoping that Lounge Acts would reopen, of course, but it was generally thought that the Hideout was sort of Lounge Acts south, south of where Lounge Acts was. So same kind of attitude, like really giving a shit about the bands, really caring about the sound of the music, making sure that the room was a great sounding room, just a general attitude of friendliness and everybody enjoying themselves and being happy doing their jobs. So that was really great. And I had actually had the privilege of sending bands from Lounge Acts to the Hideout when I was still at Lounge Acts. Like I had a communication with the Hideout, and there would be bands like Rex Hobart and the Misery Boys who would be calling for a Lounge Acts show. And I wouldn't have the date, but I would say, I know that Hideout has the date because I just talked to them. Why don't you call them and tell them I sent you? So there was just this camaraderie and this relationship that was really great.
I work for Wilco now, which doesn't have anything to do with Lounge Acts. So. No, it's totally continuation. Jeff shares a lot of the, same ways of doing things that Sue and Julia did for obvious reasons. And, if I could have worked for Lounge Acts forever, I would have, for sure. That's how I feel about the book as well. It's nice. As Seth was saying, it's not a job as much as it's it's something that you want to work hard for because it's something that you believe in and it's something that you respect the people that you work for, which is the more people I know, the more I find that that's a rare thing, which is sad, but we've been very lucky, I guess.
So I now teach at the School of the Art Institute, and I teach courses on the interactions of rock music and art. And what I try to convey to my students is that in both of those worlds, there's more to it again than just the work. That there's an ethos that gets tied into how you do your work, how you relate to your audience, how you relate to the institutions that you work with. All of that ultimately is just as important, if not more important, than the stuff that winds up on the vinyl or the CD or the MP3. And so I try to convey to my students who are on their way to going off into the world to be artists that those relationships are as important, if not more important, than the work itself. And I think I learned that partly through being at Lounge Acts and watching bands do their thing there and being in a band that played there and interacting with these people here. And I'm just trying to pass that notion along.
Oh, let me say one more thing about something I learned at Lounge Acts. So when I took over for Mark as booking assistant to Sue, it was a really rapid, terrifying transition. I think I got a day's worth of training with Mark. Well, one thing I really learned from that as a musician was, well, a couple things. So the way that Lounge Acts treated bands that would call in, that would send their material and would call in, was respectful and appreciative of the idea of people making music, and that's a rare and magical thing. So I got to be the giver of that kindness to bands that would call in. I also know how difficult it is to be a booking assistant. I mean, it's theoretically easy, but you're answering the phones all the time, you're listening to demos, there's 1,000 little tiny pieces that are all going at the same time. So as a musician, over the years, as I've had to deal with booking people, even if they're surly and unpleasant, I understand what their job is like, so I extend the same kindness to them that I would have to get back. And I definitely learned that at Lounge Acts.
Can I tell a little story about that from the outside?
Yeah.
So when I first moved to Chicago in 1990 with the band, played a few other places around town, but always wanted to play Lounge Acts. It seemed like the club to play for all the reasons we've mentioned. And if I recall, you used to book on like Mondays and Thursdays or something like that. You took booking calls 2 days a week.
Tuesdays, Thursdays.
Tuesdays, Thursdays.
We listen to tapes on Mondays.
Yeah. So this is no exaggeration at all. Every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 months straight, I called Lounge Acts and spoke to Mark. Instead of just it started off with flat rejections, and then Mark and he started to recognize my voice on the phone, and we started to chat a little. How you doing? What's going on? And I think before we ever played Lounge Acts, Mark was playing, coming in and guest appearing as a keyboard player on on a single we were making. Before we even got into the club, so we'd become friends. I think it's right, but around the same time, in any case. So we'd become sort of phone buddies through this act of rejection. So I mean, that was the style of interaction, and I felt good about being turned down at Lounge Acts. I felt better when we finally got to play there, but pleasant experience.
And I'm Facebook friends. I'm Facebook friends with a lot of those phone buddies that I still never really met. It's just transferred over to Facebook.
Mark, why don't you tell about the prank you played on us to get your band to play at Lounge Acts?
Getting to play at Lounge Acts is one thing. It was a good story, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But the prank was something else. Well, when we first moved here, as I said, we went to Wax Trax Records because that's what you did when you were a band from out of town. You went to Wax Trax and made sure that your records were in the bins. And so we walked across the street and saw all the, all the great bands and all the shows we wanted to see. The first show we saw when we moved here was within days of moving here. We saw Galaxy 500. So good start. So we dropped off records and we called and we called and we called and we called, and finally we walked in one day. And this is like, this doesn't happen. You don't walk into a business and say, hey, can you hire me? We walked in, Gary the soundman was there being super cool to us, Julia and Sue were being there, super cool to us. And we said, can we play here? And they said, well, would you drop something off? Yeah, we dropped off a record. Oh, we don't have a record player. That's, I guess, why we haven't gotten around to it. So they suggested we go across the street to Wax Trax and listen to it on their record player in the store. I mean, how nice is that? We're just a bunch of idiots from Kansas City, Missouri. And so they did that. We went across the street. The guy at the desk was nice enough to play the record. He was the drummer for Rights of the Accused. So we knew he was going to love the cocktails, as the rest of the clientele would as well. And they went upstairs to shop for shoes, so we didn't have to be face to face, just in case they hated it. And it played through a couple songs, and they came down, and I don't think he bought anything, but they said, okay, yeah, you want to open up for the Paladins? Who are the Paladins? Okay. So, and then the other one was, just to kind of test the system, we dropped off another tape of, it was the first record we recorded in Chicago. I put it on a cassette, because that's what you did back then. And we put a fake name on it. In fact, that was the name we put on it. We put on Zaxxon. And I would call as Pete from Zaxxon. over and over and over again. And you know, with a name like that, you're pretty sure you're going to hate the band. But yet, I was treated with nothing but respect on the phone for months and months and months and months and months. And so finally, what was it? Then we made the doll? Yeah. Then we dropped off. Well, the cocktails had these fabric dolls that were in these printed boxes, and that had a little window. You could see the doll, and it had each of our names on it. So we made one specifically for Pete from Zaxxon to drop it off. But there's you couldn't see one without seeing the other.
Yeah, and then I was like, wait a minute.
So she never actually she never actually listened to the tape. But Zaxxon got to open for the Paladins as well, as I recall. And Janice 18, that was the other show we got that first night.
Wow, you have a good memory.
And you offered us Roger Miller, but we couldn't do it because we were out of time.
I'm going to ask everyone to tell their favorite Lounge Act story. I hope it doesn't involve the bathrooms, but it can if you really want it to.
All right, you know Lounge Acts have notoriously horrible bathrooms, but one of my favorite things, seriously, when the toilets broke, because Sue and I would put on our orange jumpsuits and our rubber boots, and we have these big gloves and our plungers and our tools, and we tromp through the crowd going, excuse me, and we would fix the toilets. So anyway, that's, you know, we tried, but it was fun.
All right, my favorite Lounge Act story is from before I started working there. My girlfriend and I at the time, we went to see The Dirty Three. And it was one of those nights where it was a perfect music experience. It was just amazing. I don't even remember who opened, but the place was just magical. It was just charged with this electricity. It was really cool. So we were standing up there watching the band, just completely transfixed. And the sound and the feel just kept escalating, and the band was really into it, and they were just completely connected, and they were focused as this unit, and it got more and more intense and more focused and more driven. And there was just this heat, and it just seemed like nothing more could happen that could make it more intense and amazing. And they reached this epic apex, and then Bob Hartzell, who was doing the lights, turned on all the Christmas lights that covered the entire ceiling of the bar, and everybody just lost their minds. It was amazing. It was just all this light and color, and man, it was amazing. It was amazing. It was so good. It was so good. And that's a perfect example of what the Oilers was like. You know, this incredible, life-changing musical experience. I mean, I obviously never forgotten it. It was 1997, something like that.
Every Tuesday night there was Betsy and the Bone Shakers, which was a very different kind of night for Lounge Acts, but an awesome night. And then I saw a variety of shows because of the nights that I worked at. And one of them was in late July, I don't remember what year, but it was, this is, the month, it plays a part in it, because it was Monster Magnet and I believe Raging Slab, or UMI. There were two heavy bands, and it was a sold-out show, which, the fire marshal thought was 126 people, but this was closer to 450 people. July, Lounge Acts had one door, no windows. The Smoke Eaters were only, now I can say it, can I say the secret? They were just noisemakers. They didn't do anything. They just went,
That doesn't surprise me at all.
So, Gary Sheepers was doing sound, and actually Whitney was there too. So it was two of the loudest sound men, and one of the loudest shows. And at one point, a fuse is blown. And these aren't the little fuses, and this isn't the fuse box where you just do the thing. These are big things that look like dynamite with metal ends. So this heavy, loud band with this huge, heavy, loud audience all of a sudden comes. You could see the fans slowing and stopping. And that night, because it was sold out, we didn't stamp everybody's hands. We didn't want people coming in and out of the show. It was a weekday. And so every single freaking person stayed exactly where they were. There were no problems. Nobody was giving me a hard time at the door. Everybody just hung out, sweating like crazy, waiting for it to be fixed. And that just never happens in other clubs. I think it speaks to where they were and their surroundings. The other thing that always happened was on those kind of shows, we had burly people that worked there like me. But on those kind of shows, we would have Marcy, we would have Evelyn, we would have Sue or Julia work the stage. Because when they worked the stage, people didn't fuck around. People didn't mess with them. And that was it's such a difference when you go to a show and you see these gigantic dudes with no necks waiting, looking for a fight. It's a really different experience, and it really changes the way you enjoy what's going on. You feel like, again, it's a you against them kind of thing, or it's a we're all together sort of situation. We'd have the dwarves would play, and it was all fun. Those guys were there to piss us off, and we were there to be pissed off, and it was so fun. Anyway, that's my story.
That's one of the things I was going to say was how Julia and I would do security for, the heavier, potentially more raucous shows, and we never, ever had a problem, right? I mean, if someone was acting insane or looking like they were hurting someone with all that stuff, we would just go talk to them and they'd be like, okay.
I did have to throw somebody out once, and I can't remember who it was, but I think he might have been in a band called Urge Overkill. Yeah, he threw, well.
Wait, was that when one of them peed in the photo booth?
No, he threw a drink on his girlfriend. And,
That's not nice.
I threw him out. I said, get that.
But you didn't throw him out when he peed in the photo booth. That was okay.
That was David Yao.
He was really sorry. Are there photographs?
Yes, there are photographs. Not of him peeing, but of him shoving his balls between his legs to look like he had a vagina. But I also loved the secret thing Julia and I used to do, which was to go behind the stage while bands were playing and dance our asses off and then walk out really maturely and calmly like nothing had happened. But one of my favorite memories is the very sad last night Lounge X was open and what Mark Greenberg did.
Oh, that's awesome. I peed in the photo booth. Oh, you know about that?
No, because all of our problems started with one guy complaining about noise during the very last night and the very last set and the very last band that ever played. Mark Greenberg, there was a cocktail song where Mark would go on some sort of a diatribe mid-song, but on this night he opened up the back door, which led to this guy's a acoustic sweet spot right to his bedroom, and screamed his ass off for 20 minutes.
I remember this. It was a long time.
I mean, we have video of that, right? I mean, not here, but in existence, because that was the best thing ever. And there are millions more memories, but
The audience was with him too. He had backup on that screen.
See, I'll give 3 quick stories in order of importance. So I remember approaching Sue to try to put together a festival called the Cardigan Festival that I helped organize for 5 years to benefit Howard Brown Health Center. And I remember the first year the motivation truly was that I was trying to get my band on better bills. So I thought if I put together the evening, I can get good bands and then I can stick my band on there. But then by the second year, bands started calling me. How this happened, I have no idea. So it turned into 2 nights. And then the third year, I had bands calling from all over the country, bands coming from the East Coast, coming from the West Coast, who wanted to come play for free for this benefit at Lounge X. The benefit was for Howard Brown Health Center, but how word got out back in the pre-internet days and how bands found me and my phone number to call me to ask if they could play. And then I'm suddenly this impresario bringing in bands from all over the country for this 4-night festival. So I remember how many. Yeah.
Right.
So that's one, and then the second one is the night that I was given the Lounge X We Love You card, which says at the bottom, I can't read it in this light, but something to the effect of free admission to almost all shows in perpetuity. I was number 80 of those who received these cards. I don't know how many were given out in total, but that was a very proud night. And then the most important night was the night I met my wife at Lounge X, who came to tell me that the title of the EP that we had recently put out was incorrect. Yeah, turns out kimchi is not strictly cabbage. It can be radish. And Mark did the cover for that EP.
All right, so it seems like we have a good deal of time. Is there anything that we haven't, that you particularly want to talk about that we haven't got to yet?
Well, so one thing that that was really cool for me working at Lounge X, and it was 100% cool, honestly. One thing that was really cool for me was, so when I lived in Lawrence, Kansas, before I moved here in '92, even though Lounge X was only 2 years old at that point, oh, 87, okay. But it was so well known across the country that when I was talking about moving to Chicago, everybody was like, oh man, you gotta go to Lounge X. So it was already well known throughout the country, which is pretty impressive. I mean, Chicago's a big city, but there were lots of, there was a good number of other clubs in town that people could have been ranting about, but Lounge X was the only one that anybody ever bothered to mention. So when I got to go from Mark as booking assistant to Sue, one of the really cool things that I didn't anticipate through my horror of learning how to be a booking assistant was that I got to give a chance to all these really great bands. Like there are people that I'm really good friends with now who I gave them their first show, like our first Chicago show. So like the Spivies, which it's Jason Frederick, who went on to make the the Means and Love Story and Blood Red, and he's a really well-known poster artist. He's done the Reader cover for the for Pitchfork. It's a Pitchfork that he does the cover for. Yeah. I gave first Chicago show to the Hammocks, and a lot of those guys have gone on to really great musical ventures since then. I got to give my buddies, the Baldwin Brothers, I really liked their demo at the time, and Sue was kind enough to let me put them on with Super Furry Animals, which made their lives it's like they'd won the lottery. They couldn't. Every time I see any of those guys, they're like, "Thanks for that show, man. Thanks for that show." Yeah, it's kind of.
One thing that I think about, and it's so weird to me, is that it was before the internet, and there was no Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and everything, and I can't even imagine, there was no cell phone, there was no cameras, so any pictures of that time are special and isolated pictures where not every, thousands of people have the same thing, and yeah, we have a photo, and it's just so weird because I can't even imagine how it would be different. I mean, it's so weird to think about it without any of that.
Yeah, we didn't have a computer. We had a computer in the basement, but
yeah, Julia and I, to get on the internet, which was brand new, it was dial-up, and we would put in the address of the thingy we were trying to get to, go upstairs, have like a glass of pop, talk for 15 minutes, and go downstairs, and it would just be getting on the webpage. And I'm totally serious.
and she did all the booking without the benefit of a computer. Everything is handwritten in notebooks. I can imagine that today. You can't even imagine it. I don't even know how we did anything. I don't know.
It was really, really word of mouth and through zines and phone trees and things like that. Huh? Oh yes.
Is that Leslie?
And the thing about wheat pasting the flyers up on the walls, that was really important then. That was how you found out about stuff.
Bringing them to record stores.
Yeah.
So different.
Oh, very much along those lines. I remember we booked the Meshuggahs. Remember that? And Sue and I, we weren't sure how they spelled Meshuggahs, but there was no internet really to look up Meshuggahs, their specific spelling. So I remember Sheila and I were back and we're like, how do they spell Meshuggahs? It's just a funny, like, yeah, you can't just go on the internet and be like, Meshuggahs. Oh yeah, there they are. I think we did. I think so. I hope so. Well, and also the fact that everything was cassettes or CDs, mostly cassettes from what I've...
We still have.
I have boxes of that stuff, by the way.
Oh man, that's gonna be worth something.
I just, yeah, I still have them all too. I just remembered another fun memory when, before you, Lawrence, I think, and when Mark would go on tour, Fred Armisen would be my assistant. And he would, when bands called, because he had to answer the phone, oh God, he was so obnoxious, but he would tell bands that so we would know it was in regards to booking, they had to draw a monkey on the envelope. I still have all those envelopes.
But also, he would speak in that voice, and he would never change.
He would do characters on the phone. I mean, he did some things that were bad too, like because everyone would ask for Mark, and one time, he only did this once.
He did not only do this once.
Well, no, he said, I'm sorry, Mark passed away.
Did you know
And then-
him well?
And then he also said that Mark was in the hospital getting an ass implant, or reduction, or implant. And then he also said, listen, Mark is really sensitive about this, but can you do me a favor? He'll be back next week, and he's very hard of hearing. When you call.
Clown Camp was one of them as well.
Clown camp, fat camp, mime camp.
He would also meet bands pretending to be the sound man and say, oh, great, I'm Fred, your sound man. Do you guys want to do a sound check before the show or after the show? And they'd be like, He's like, think about it. I need to go find the microphones, so think about it.
Oh, and then when we did karaoke, he was the karaoke master, which he was a different character what did we do it, once a month? Yeah, he was Hitler. Then he was nice Hitler though, like who had a vegan magazine or zine and wanted recipes for it from the audience. And he was Jesus. He was Wicker Park Girl.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
With his
Right, he would bring his bike in.
and a chain link tattoo around his upper arm.
That to this day is the only karaoke performance I have ever given.
Me too, but mine were after hours. And I have all of that on videotape.
Jim O'Rourke and I did Paradise by the Dashboard Lights. He did the Meatloaf parts, I did the Ellen Foley parts. Oh, I remember Weasel and Jim doing Total Eclipse of the Heart so violently. They were like throwing chairs at each other.
And remember, we had a no high fives allowed rule at Lounge X, but we had a sign that said, on karaoke night, high fives are not only allowed but encouraged.
One of my favorite karaoke performances, I was the sound guy on karaoke night, so I'd stand in the booth with Fred and just marvel at his weirdness. One of my favorites was when the Blue Man Group, a bunch of those guys came in and they did the Macarena. You remember that? Oh, it's crazy. They just sort of marched in place and would just sort of mumble along and then go, hey, Macarena, all together. That was genius. And then when Fred and Sally Timms, they did what was the duet they did? Oh, that's right, I Got You. They were in the middle of divorce. It was spectacular. Like the hate lines rising off of Sally's head as she sang with him. It's brilliant.
That was one of the things I loved about Lounge Acts. It wasn't just music. It wasn't just bands and shows. They had all sorts of like playful things going. There would be, a little bit of theater, spoken word performance. Bridget Murphy, their show. That was a favorite. And it's like, you could go there for a show, but if you just went there, there'd be something going on. And that community never really stuck to whether you had a band booked at the moment or not.
We did every Monday night, Pat McCurdy. He he didn't fit in with what everybody thought Lounge X was, but every Monday night he packed the place. And Tuesday nights we did Betsy and the Bone Shakers, like forever.
And they did not pack the place.
No, but, you know, right, we didn't just do one thing.
I remember you guys talking about Port Concord and I thought we're gonna be like crazy hard rock. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna come, but I gotta be bigger than super loud. And I was like,
Fast forward.
there's some on Lounge X.
They're not that.
I'm like, what are they doing here?
But that diversity, I think, really set the stage for the scene because, you know, clubs like the Hideout, they kind of have that vibe now. Like, you know, Empty Bottle has it to some extent. You know, there isn't a specific locked-in sound. And it's open to collaboration between musicians. I mean, Chicago is a place where you'll have, like, you know, a metal guy playing with, you know, this avant-garde free jazz guy and someone who's also known for, like, all country, all in the same band, or working on these side projects. And that didn't happen in a lot of other places. Chicago was known for that, and I feel like the city never really appreciated what it had. I feel like they did not understand. People came from all over the world to go to Lounge X. You know, it was an important contribution to American cultural history. It was an important place. It mattered.
Thank you.
I'd like to share my favorite memory.
Actually, let's, I think we have time. Let's open this up to the audience. Come on up.
Okay. It's just, I mean, it's just silly. It's just, Spencer might have been maybe 2. I don't even know if he was walking. And there was this blue drum kit that he still uses in the basement next to the 10-speed Schwinn, the Sissy Bar Banana Seat Schwinn bike in that cramped basement / dressing room area, beer area. And I remember Sue picking Spencer up, I don't even know if he could walk, setting him on the seat of the drum kit, and him just going like, I was like, oh my God, he can drum like a crazy man. And I couldn't figure out if it was because like he'd been in here the whole time. But it was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, he's a genius.
He could not sit up yet.
Yeah, I thought he was like a baby, right?
Yeah, but like, I just remember, like, our office was such a disgusting piece of shit, just like the bathrooms. And when Spencer was a baby, why am I revealing this? It's so horrible, but I would bring him to work with me, and he would be when he was an infant,
yeah.
He would be in the car seat, stacked on a stack of beer cases, with a heater, because it was freezing in the winter, a heater in front of him and back of him. Just, the heaters also were on beer cases while I sat there booking, and he was just laying there on beer cases. I'm sorry, honey.
I still carry him out on stage and put him on the drum kit.
Why don't you talk about getting Wendy babysitting?
Didn't know how nice Dan Orman really was.
Oh, yeah. So you guys really have not done him justice. You haven't even said his name yet. I'm really disappointed.
Yeah, Dan.
So I spent the first 4 years of my life at Lounge X pretty much every single day, I think. I don't really know, it's what I'm told. And I actually wrote my college essay about that last year when I was finishing high school. And it worked, I get into college. But yeah, when I was there in that utterly unchild safe environment, Dan Orman, the doorman, was my guardian, and at least when I wasn't on the beer, the sex of whatever in front of the heater,
Or being breastfed.
or being breastfed by Mark. But yeah, some of my earliest memories of my life are running around with my giant headphones on before any band, while the place was empty, playing in the photo booth and playing on the couch, which was disgusting. Yeah. But yeah, Dan kept me from like eating cigarette butts and licking liquor off the floor, so I owe him a lot. And he works at Martyrs now, which is like, I think Hideout is like Lounge X South, and then I think Martyrs is like Lounge X same area. And I've gotten to play a couple shows there, and Kate and Katie Quinn and what's her husband's name? Ray. They're awesome, and I think another continuation of like the same ethos that Lounge X had. And Dan works there, so he's on his feet, which is awesome, and I love getting to see him every time I go there.
Does he still write his advice column?
I don't know, but yeah, he should. It's the best thing ever. And actually, you can read all of Dan Orman's advice columns on loungex.com or .net. Loungex. Yeah, one of those. Google it. But the LoungeX website is still on the internet, thanks to Tony Adams, and it's like pretty much, I think, cryogenically frozen. It's the same way it was when it closed, including like a really sad message on it that says we'll be back soon. But you know, we're still here, so could still happen. But go to the website and read Danny Wanny, as I call him. His advice columns, because they're awesome. It's the coolest thing ever. He's a comedic genius. I mean, Fred ended up on SNL, but I think Dan kind of missed his calling on that. It was amazing. But yeah.
I just want to add one thing. When Sheila and I walked in, the smell of ammonia was just like, we thought, oh, it's Gloria. Thought Lounge X just got cleaned.
All of Dan's advice columns were done with analog because he didn't have a computer and he hated them. The idea of them, so I think Tony had to print out. So I think Tony had to print them out and then take them to Dan, and he would write them at home and then bring them back, and then somebody had to type them up to put in. So that's an important legacy that should be preserved. Monica was talking about all the different shows that they sort of did, that kind of, to me, went under like public service. And there was Summer Orchestra, there was the Scatolites, Raymond Zarek. They all lost money, but they were all awesome. And Julie'd be like, we lost like $1,000 out of the till. I'm like, honey, there was nothing better on the planet happening tonight than what happened at your bar. So those were great. I mean, when the Scatolites hit the first note of their sound check, nobody sounded like that. So the other memory I have, like my best Lounge X memory, I think, was the night I was bar backing, where I was horribly sexually harassed on a regular basis. And it's true. Oh, on that note, I also, Julia says it was no big deal if they were women, but several times I would go in to play pinball at 5 o'clock on a Saturday or Sunday when they were opening, and regularly men would walk in and start talking to me about what they had to sell at Lounge X, which was insane because I was there to drink free Coke and play pinball, and the lady at the bar was the person you needed to talk to. So I saw the bias even if Julia didn't, or didn't care. Maybe you were just in denial, or I don't know, whatever you did to get through, but it was there. So my memory was, I was bar backing, and Evan Johns had shown up, and he thought he was headlining, but he wasn't because the Young Fresh Fellows were headlining, and he was pretty pissed. And I don't even think he really knew who they were. I'm not sure how cognizant he was of the rest of the world, because he was a pretty bad alcoholic who was an amazing guitar player that I had known from Austin. I didn't know him, but I had seen it. So they got him through, Sue and Julia got him through the denial, anger, all the stages of grief that he was not headlining, and got him a bottle, and he met the Young Fresh Fellows, and they did their thing, and he played a show, and he was fantastic. And I think the only rockabilly guitar player who released a record on Alternative Tentacles. So he was great, and then the Young Fresh Fellows played, and Evan went down to the basement to the dressing room and laid down on the couch with his bottle. And the Young Fresh Fellows played their set, and then got called back for an encore, and they called Evan, and it was packed. It was one of the nights where there was 450-ish people. And they called him back. They called him up to play with them, and no one could find him, and I knew where he was, so I went downstairs. I'm like, dude, wake up. They want you to play. And he kind of just like, you know, sits up, and he's just completely loaded. And I'm like, come on, let's go, let's set the bottle down. And I kind of herded him upstairs and got him through the crowd to the stage. And it was the most amazing thing that they played a song, and in the second song, there was an air conditioner vent that didn't work, and there was a hole in it, and Kurt crawls upside down so that his feet go into the vent. So he's hanging, and his hair is hanging, and he's playing guitar. And right before that, between those two songs, Evan had sat down on the drum riser, taken off a shoe, taken off a white athletic sock, which is what every good rock guitar player was touring with back then, and put it on his left fret hand. And then stood up, and then they played, and he played a song with a white tube sock on his hand. To no difference, like he was still shredding. And I don't know why or how that was possible, but like the image of him, if I could have one picture, that would be it, of him with a sock and Kurt hanging upside down and them playing some garage song that I don't remember the song, but it was pretty fantastic. Right, instead, that's all I got.
You know, since Tony's here, I just thought I wanted to say my other thing I wanted to add. I went back to, I started at Lounge Jacks when it was Julia and Jennifer, when she had just opened, because we bartended together at Joel's, and I was coming back from New York, and I was like, I know where I could do a show, there's a back room at that place. And so I came, Julia's like, all right. And so a couple of years later, I went to Park West, and then I came back to Lounge Jacks to do my 5-year anniversary show. And I made it like a 3-ring circus, and we made like a fake stage in the middle, one in the back, and then people also performed on the bar. And so in the middle stage, I was up there with my coal diggers, of which Tony Adams, please stand up and give us a twirl, was my straight coal digger. And he has stuck to it till really, he stuck to it. And so I'm up doing my like Christmas thing, and he's wearing antlers and hooves, like a thing. And apparently he falls asleep on stage while in the middle of this like Christmas kind of night, Millie's Night Before Christmas kind of song. He falls asleep, and then I picked up a light to move it, and I got shocked. Like dropped everything, which I think woke Tony up. And that is one of my memories from that chance.
Right. Statute of limitations on that shock.
Right. We're fine. It's all, we can talk about this now. Okay, Adam, I think you had something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, you were talking about the legacy before, and if you permit me to get a little serious for a moment. I've known Sue since 86, 87, West End days. She got to know me as someone who wasn't old enough to be there, and still allowed me into the show. And that brought on a legacy of allowing me in for free. And it was a rare occasion where I paid for a show at Lounge Jacks, and it's very, what's that?
Never.
Benefit shows. I paid for benefit shows. Seth's Cardigan Fest, amongst others. But it was a beautiful, beautiful thing for me to have, to be in such a position, to enjoy what I loved most at the time, seeing live concerts and being able to do it all for free. And going back to the legacy, it has, what you did for me in the 90s has made me a better person, has made me a more giving person, where I now find myself to be more generous in the wake of your generosity towards me. And I will never be able to appreciate that enough. There's really, I can't think of the right words, but you know what I'm trying to say. And it means the world to me to have been a part of Lounge Jacks in my own way, and to have these memories, this kindness, to give to others in my own way now. But to end on something that's a little bit more amusing, there were rare occasions at Lounge X where I was hanging out with a woman, and having known Sue since I was a teenager, I was always looked at as someone who was a lot younger, even when I wasn't. And there was a time where me and a girl were getting a little bit too intimate for public near the door at Lounge X. And Sue, possibly Julia, and the bar staff started throwing ice at us as we were kissing in the doorway. I love that. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure everybody here remembers Dan, the door guy. Everybody, he's kind of stoic, and yeah, a little bit stoic. So I'd go there all the time and be like, "Hey, how you doing?" He'd be like, $7. Like the 50th time I've been there. "Hey, how you doing, Dan?" That's $7. So we got the chance to play there. I think it was Gina, my bass player, and my old band, The Blacks. We actually met her at a G-Love and Special Sauce show at Lounge X. And so anyway, I think it was her 21st birthday. We were there, and so we played, and then Dan's at the bar. So I get up there, we're talking. We end up. He's awesome. He's an incredible guy. We talked for hours. He's really funny. You know, I felt like I finally connected with this aloof weirdo, and so. We had this great night. So maybe 2 weeks later, I come back into Lounge X. I'm like, "Hey, Dan, how you doing?" He's like, $7. And I was thinking, and then I became a doorman later, and I kind of just, that was like part of the job. Like, you have to just do that. And it hit me, you know, 10 years later, like, oh, he was probably like that. Because everybody, if you let everybody in free that you were friends with, no one would ever make any money. So is that his own thing, or did you guys kind of tell him?
Born to do that.
He went above and beyond with that, I think.
Yes, he was. I'm sure.
All right. You'd ask him, who's playing there tonight? And he'd always look at the calendar and go, college rock music. But you had to check.
All right, we do have to wrap this up, so let's hear from Jeff.
All right.
I was married to Susie before Dan. I think I was already married to Susie, and Dan was still telling me how much the door was. It wasn't personal. He was a professional, and so I first met Susie, my wife, at the Cubby Bear. My band Uncle Tupelo was given our first gig ever in Chicago at the Cubby Bear. It was Susie's 30th birthday, and she was walking around with a basketball underneath her dress, pretending she was pregnant. We have the video to prove it. My mother and my sister were there because they had come to see the big Chicago show, and I'm in the background. And it was years later, when Lounge X opened, that we met and hit it off. And I moved to Chicago with a trunk full of my stuff, a car load of stuff, that's all I had. And in the trunk were notebooks that said, "Call Sue Miller." All of my booking notebooks said, "Call Sue Miller." That's like pretty much the only thing, my goal in life was to play at Lounge X and to get to be around Susie. And so my favorite memory from Lounge X is being on stage after a marching band had marched through Lounge X playing "Here Comes the Bride," and we were married on the stage at Lounge X. And I just wanted to say that I could say 1,000 memories like everybody else that spent their whole that decade there, and or more than a decade. But anyway, I don't know. I was just getting wistful thinking about that, but that's my favorite moment. Thank you.
Jeff Tweedy, Uncle Tupelo, Wilco, and Loungejack's spouse. All right, well, I suppose that's it. I think we need to wrap up, but I'd like to thank all of the panelists, Seth, Mark, Sue, Julia, Lawrence, everyone who spoke up and contributed, CIMMfest for putting all of this together, and all of you for being here. So, thank you.
We didn't get any more pathetic stories than you have,
I have some. A few.
Secret?
Yeah. Oh, I can show this. I don't really have a lot of pictures from that time, but a friend of mine thankfully put this up on Facebook. This is me from 1993 with blonde hair, my roommate at the time, and we're sitting on Jim Carroll's lap in the pea stain photo booth. He had really bony knees, and he told me I looked lascivious. Rest in peace, Jim. A person who died. All right, well, thank you, everyone, and happy trails, and keep Loungejacks in your hearts.
Thank you all for attending. If you've put your tables together, could you pull them apart so that they're ready for our next conference, which is speed networking. If you're interested, please stay.